All right, good morning, everyone. This is Friday, January 23rd. My name is Roman Miller, and this will be your Wakefield winter storm briefing update. So I won't go through all of these bullet points right here because I'll be going a little bit more in depth as we continue on with the presentation. But the main changes are that we continue to increase our confidence in this winter storm coming up this weekend, mainly Saturday night through the day on Sunday and into Sunday night. We do still have a winter storm watch, which is in effect for the entire area outside of eastern portions of northeastern North Carolina. And we do expect the conditions to make travel nearly impossible Sunday into Sunday night. And we urge drivers to stay off the roads. Dangerous to devastating icing is looking increasingly likely over portions of the area, and areas that see heavy ice will experience widespread power outages that could last for days, widespread downed trees, and nearly impossible travel. Behind this system, we're still expecting that bitterly cold air to come in and last for the next week, and that will really kind of prolong the duration of the snow and ice lingering on the ground and surfaces before they can really melt. And today and tomorrow, this is when everybody should be making their final preparations for a major snow and icing event. Major and locally extreme impacts are likely. So looking at our timeline here, right now, what we're expecting is an Arctic front to come through tonight. And with that Arctic front, we expect temperatures to become much colder. This is when our really cold air mass starts to settle in. And it will even be a little bit breezy too, late tonight into tomorrow morning. And due to those temperatures in the teens, and you factoring in the wind, we're going to have wind chills of -5 to above 5 degrees overnight tonight into tomorrow morning. And due to those very cold temperatures, we do have a cold weather advisory in effect, which I'll show here in a moment. Now on Saturday, it'll be a cold day all along throughout the entire day with increasing cloud cover. And recent trends have been for the snow to develop a little bit later, probably now after sunset. And then as it continues and the event continues to progress across the area, we expect to change over to some mixed precipitation sometime Saturday night into Sunday, with Sunday being predominantly freezing rain and sleet across much of the area. And then behind this system, Sunday night into Monday, it eventually tapers off. And on Monday, even though the event is over in terms of precipitation, it does look like it's going to become breezy behind this. So the combination of any snow or ice covered trees or power lines with the increasingly breezy or windy conditions could lead to additional power outages. Here's our current winter storm watch. I will show the graphic here. It's a little bit difficult to read, but parts of the state of Virginia are under a winter storm warning. Per collaboration with our neighboring offices, we have opted to hold off for this morning for any upgrades to warnings. However, we will be monitoring that, and changes could be coming this afternoon, so stay tuned for any latest changes for us. Now, looking at what we're expecting for snowfall, right now we're still expecting a general 1 to 3 inches of snow across southern portions of the forecast area, mainly north of the Virginia-North Carolina border. A little bit closer to Richmond in central portions of the area, you could be looking at around 3 to 6 inches. And then across far northern portions of the area, we are still looking at the potential for 6 to 10 inches of snow and sleet. I will also note that these snow totals are not just snow. Everything shown here is a combination of snow and sleet. So it's possible for an area that gets 6 inches of total snow accumulation that you got around 4.5 inches of snow and an inch and a half of sleet. And that would get you up to 6 inches of total snow accumulation. And I'll show this as well. This is our worst case snow potential scenario. And the main thing to point out here is how similar it is to our forecast. So right now we're already kind of forecasting on the higher end of model guidance. And it is possible that we get a little bit less than what we're forecasting, but right now it looks unlikely that we'll get more snow than either what we're forecasting or, in this case, what's shown on the map here with our high-end amount. Regarding the character of the snow. So when the snow initially starts, and actually before I do that, I will go ahead and show what this could look like. So here is a blend of models showing what the precipitation type could look like at any given hour. So we'll go through in time. Here's Saturday at 7 p.m. And you can see some of the blue starting to move in potentially to portions of the Piedmont. But overall, much of the area still looks like we may remain dry. And then if I go forward to 10 o'clock, now you see the blue starting to overspread much of the region. That would be snow. It is potential now that the models are showing for North Carolina and maybe even far southern Virginia to start off as sleet instead of snow. We're a little uncertain about that right now, but we will continue to monitor that potential. But for the rest of the area further north, it does look like it will start off as snow still. And that will be Saturday night. Here's 1 a.m. And then going forward in time, here's 7 a.m. on Saturday. You can see this pink and red start to move into the area and spread further north. That's our mixed precipitation, a combination of probably mostly sleet at this point, but there will likely be a swath of freezing rain even early Sunday morning across probably southeastern Virginia and portions of northeastern North Carolina. And then you can see even have just some regular green here across the extreme southeastern portions of our area, and that's showing the potential for temperatures to warm above freezing with the changeover to plain rain possible down there. But then note how far north all that mixed precipitation moves from 7 a.m. on Sunday to 10 a.m. on Sunday. By 10 a.m. on Sunday, we're expecting pretty much our entire forecast area to no longer be snow. It's possible that there could be some snow mixed in across the far north, but by and large, it looks like by around mid-morning or late morning to around midday on Sunday, we will likely have changed over to mostly sleet across interior portions of the area with a swath of freezing rain to the southeast of that zone of sleet. And then again, it's looking like temperatures now are likely to warm above freezing across the coastal locations, helping to change everything over to plain rain over there. This area, in between the two zones, including the office of Wakefield, we will have to monitor that area closely, as this blend of guidance shows the models are showing two different potentials here. There is some potential that we get above freezing. However, that tends to be a little bit aggressive on how fast that we warm. And with past events, usually we hold on to cold air a little bit longer further inland. So it's possible that they'll have a pretty good gradient of temperatures here setting up somewhere across eastern portions of the area. And you can have temperatures well below freezing to the west and then above freezing and plain rain to the east. So that exact line of where the freezing rain to rain transition starts and ends, that is still going to be uncertain. But then as we go through the day Sunday, you can see that red just kind of hangs on through the day, especially across the Piedmont. And then even going into Sunday night, now we're starting to get a little bit more of a mixed signal here of rain along the coast. It's still too early to say if it'll ever change over to plain rain and temperatures warm above freezing all the way to 95, but it looks like we'll be right around that 32-degree mark somewhere in this corridor. And then this should all end sometime Sunday night into early Monday, and then drying out behind it. But again, cold temperatures are expected. So with this changing conditions on Saturday evening into Sunday, when snow initially starts, it's probably going to have some sort of fluffy component to it across northern portions of the area. Further south, it probably will just start as kind of a wet snow in southern Virginia. And if it does start as snow at all in northeastern North Carolina, it probably will be quite wet. And as the line of sleet lifts north through the night on Saturday night, likely we'll see our snow ratios become lower and it'll transition to a heavy wet snow before changing over to just sleet and then eventually freezing rain. So then by Sunday, we expect, it's red here because we're expecting mainly no snow at this point. Again, in the morning, it's possible into maybe late morning that you could have some snow across the far northern portions of the area holding on, but more likely than not, it's going to change over to that sleet and freezing rain by midday on Sunday everywhere, and then remain either freezing rain or sleet for much of the area inland, and then plain rain closer to the coast through the day. As far as our expected ice totals, right now we are expecting a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of freezing rain across a large portion of the area, kind of following that 85 corridor and then going up now into the northern neck. And then on either side of that zone, we still have a corridor of 1/4 to a 1/2 inch of freezing rain potential. Now, it's going to be very difficult to pinpoint locations along the edge of that, exactly what side of the line they'll fall on, such as Williamsburg. Right here, we have them right on that edge of the line on either side of 1/4 inch of ice potential. So for those locations that are really close, prepare for the worst case scenario. And then, if it ends up getting a little bit less ice, then that's a good thing for you, but at least prepare for the worst case. And with all of this freezing rain, temperatures will remain in the 20s across much of the central and western portions of the area. And the combination of this freezing rain on top of the sleet and snow will create nearly impossible travel conditions. So we're urging drivers to stay off the roads. And with all of this freezing rain, that's going to be your best potential for the widespread tree damage and power outages in that corridor. Once we get to around a 1/2 inch of freezing rain, your impacts start to get much more significant. And because of this prolonged period of cold air moving in behind the system, some of the power outages could last for multiple days. I will also show here a little bit of probabilities when it comes to the freezing rain. So let me just move this so you can see a little bit of a readout here. This is kind of our 50th percentile. So about half of the model guidance shows roughly this much freezing rain. You can see it has over 1/2 inch of freezing rain, basically along and west of I-95, but then also going into the northern neck. Again, it's going to be a battle zone here on the eastern portions of that freezing rain zone, depending on exactly where that 32-degree line sets up and how far inland it pushes. But if I go to the 10th percentile, which is, we consider that our best case scenario, or the least likely amount, or rather the least amount of ice, at least this much ice. It still has 1/4 inch of freezing rain from Richmond to Emporia to Blackstone, and at least 1/10 inch of ice surrounding that area as well. And then if we go to our worst case scenario ice, that's when we're looking at significant impacts. I will show this graphic in one more moment, so I'll get rid of this screen for now. And here is our local probabilities for at least 1/4 inch of ice. So generally speaking, when it comes to winter storm warnings, we're looking at 1/4 inch of ice for the ice component for that. And we do have a high chance for at least 1/4 inch of ice across much of the area. And again, we still have those probabilities all the way up to Dorchester and Bertie County as well. So all of these areas could see up to at least 1/4 inch of freezing rain. And when you move that probability over to at least 1/2 inch, then now you're still around or above 50% from the northern neck all the way through the 85 corridor, including the city of Richmond and a large portion of the area. Now again, that 0.5 inches of freezing rain is really when you start to get the more widespread impacts. And then we even do have a probability for 3/4 inch or more of freezing rain. And that looks like right now it's centered mainly to the southwest of Richmond. However, you can see it's right on the doorstep of Richmond. So we'll have to monitor everywhere in this region of the, just outside of the red as well, for the potential for more than 1/2 inch of freezing rain. The location circled right here, again, they could see the potential for 3/4 inch up to 1 inch of freezing rain. And if you do get that much freezing rain, the impacts would be widespread power outages and impossible travel, as well as the potential for those trees down and power outages to last for upwards of over a week potentially, depending on how widespread this area is and how long it takes to get all those power lines back up and into service. So we are very concerned about this area. And here's that worst case ice potential. So when it comes to worst case, we're not expecting this much right now, but as far as planning purposes go, this is what you should plan for your impacts. Worst case scenario, we get upwards of 1 inch of freezing rain across portions of the area, mainly again along that 85 corridor, maybe even going towards Emporia on 95. But you can see that area in purple that extends through the city of Richmond and towards the northern neck, not quite there yet, but basically there. That whole region, again, that's our highest concern area right now, because they have the potential to see over 3/4 of an inch. It doesn't mean they will, but as far as preparing now, you should prepare for the potential for that much freezing rain. And again, if you were to receive this much rain, that would be a devastating ice storm across the area with significant impacts. I also will note here, for locations further to the east, that even though we don't have freezing rain in the accumulations for you, there still is a potential for a little bit of freezing rain before you change over to plain rain. All right, now behind our system, now we're looking at Monday. So Monday is when all the precipitation ends by Monday morning. However, our winds shift to out of the northwest, and winds increase through the day with some wind gusts above 20 miles per hour across the area. And with these winds and having all of that ice and snow and sleet everywhere, we are concerned for additional power outages occurring on Monday behind the system. As far as the expected onset time, I kind of mentioned that a little bit earlier, showing the graphic of when the snow kind of moves into the area. But right now, sometime either late Saturday afternoon or evening across western portions of the area, and after sunset and Saturday evening east of 95. Recently, model trends have been for a little bit slower onset for the precipitation. So most of this is currently looking a little bit later, but we can't rule out that it could start in the late afternoon timeframe in the western portions of the area. And as far as when it will end, pretty much everywhere you're looking at either late Sunday night or Monday morning. So this is going to be a long duration event. This, I won't stay on this slide for too long because it can get a little bit confusing here with all the different images and icons. But the general idea is that you start to snow for most of the area on Saturday evening, so late Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, and then you transition to that mixed precipitation across pretty much everywhere, some point during the day on Sunday, and then by Sunday afternoon, now you're talking about more of that freezing rain as opposed to sleet. It's still possible you get sleet across the northwestern portions of the area, but freezing rain will be a concern Sunday during the midday, through the afternoon, and into the evening hours for most of the area away from the coast. And then as it ends, you may get a little bit more mixed sleet and freezing rain, probably leaning more towards the freezing rain versus sleet for now, given how warm aloft it will be. But it does eventually taper off by Monday morning. And regarding temperatures, I'll show this briefly. You can see that it's going to be very cold leading up to the event, which means that our road temperatures will likely be below freezing when this starts. And then beyond this event, or rather in the middle of it, we could get above freezing along the coast. Inland portions probably won't get above freezing. And then we likely do remain, if we stay below freezing, we should remain below freezing throughout the day, Sunday into Sunday night into Monday. And I will show here in one moment the temperatures. So here's another view of what the temperatures could look like. So I'll skip ahead till tonight. So here's tonight. You see that colder air moving in. Here's 6 a.m. on Saturday and 7 a.m. on Saturday. We have temperatures potentially in the lower teens across much of the area. And with that doesn't even factor in the wind chills. Again, tonight we do have that cold weather advisory for the wind chills of on both sides of zero, -5 to above 0.5 degrees. And then that cold air sticks around through the day on Saturday. You can see pretty much everybody stays in the 20s except for the far southeast. Those locations might get into the lower 30s on Saturday, but most locations remain in the 20s on Saturday ahead of the system. And then once the precipitation starts, we will cool down as it's very dry. So once the snow evaporates and helps cool down the column of air, it'll actually cool down our temperatures. So once the snow starts, we should drop into the teens across much of the area, especially further inland you go. A little bit warmer along the coast. And then as we move ahead into Sunday morning, here's Sunday 7 a.m., you can see that warmer air starting to push in across southeastern Virginia and northeastern North Carolina. And then by 10 a.m., you could potentially be into the lower 40s in Virginia Beach on Sunday. Again, the exact location of where that freezing line sets up, don't take this verbatim because the models tend to struggle with that quite a bit. But areas along the coast probably will get above freezing on Sunday. And then we are continuously forecasting and trying to fine tune exactly where that freezing line gets to try to figure out the best impact for the freezing rain. But right now, the highest confidence for getting above freezing is essentially in this sort of an orientation in the darker blues towards the greens, where we likely will get above freezing as that low pressure just forms a little bit too close to the coast for keeping that cold air in place. And then behind the system, Sunday night, you can see we kind of hold on to those cold temperatures inland, and they don't really go anywhere. And now we're talking about Monday at 7 a.m., below freezing for much of the inland portions of the area, and maybe still above freezing along the southeast, but we will continue to monitor that and fine-tune that as well. We will skip that for now. And looking at our wind gusts and wind chills. So right now, what we're looking at is potential for some wind as well on Saturday. Mainly along the coast is going to be your strongest winds during the event. So that'll be Saturday evening into Sunday. You can see here Chesapeake, 23 mile an hour gusts, Corolla potentially up to 30 mile an hour gusts or so. You will see those stronger winds tomorrow morning as well. That's with that cold weather advisory. So they're kind of two separate events here. We have the cold weather advisory and the initial surge of Arctic air moving in from the north late tonight into tomorrow morning. And then you get the northeasterly winds with the event. Not super strong inland. Here's Farmville, around 15 mile an hour gusts, but that could still be enough with how much freezing rain and snow that we'll potentially have on objects to cause some issues with power lines. And then again, we are still concerned into Monday as those winds do become stronger area wide and they switch directions as well. So that could continue to prolong the issue and the impacts of this event. And then regarding our wind chills, right now you can see that tonight into early tomorrow morning, we could see below zero wind chills across a good portion of the area. And then we stay cold, very cold, through the entire middle of the week and probably through the rest of the week. Looking ahead at the forecast, it actually looks like it gets even colder into late week period. And then here, Monday night into Tuesday morning, we do have the potential to see below zero wind chills again. Louisa here, we have -5 to -10. So this is a dangerous situation all around. If people do lose power, we are expecting this dangerous cold to move in behind it for a prolonged period of time. So prepare for that as well. And then I mentioned already the cold weather advisory. Here's our actual map to kind of visualize where our lowest feels like temperatures will be. So you can see Richmond and points to the north, below zero possible for what it will feel like tomorrow morning. As far as the onset of precipitation, you can see looks like mainly Saturday evening into early Monday morning rather, before it all ends. Again, this is going to be a long duration cold behind this event or behind the system, and the outlook for the next 6 to 10 days is high confidence and below normal temperatures, potentially well below normal temperatures. And highs may not rise above freezing for northern portions of the area until the first week of February. And lows every night will be well below freezing for at least the next 10 days. So whatever melting you may be able to get throughout the next week after this event, that's probably just going to refreeze at night, at least further inland. And here's an image showing kind of the impacts of what to expect depending on how much freezing rain you get. So less than 1/10 of an inch of freezing rain, travel does become hazardous and you get minor to moderate impacts, especially on elevated surfaces. However, once you get to that 0.1 to 1/4 of an inch of freezing rain, you start to get much more impacts across the area. With black ice likely, roads can ice over and you get very hazardous travel conditions, as well as some minor tree damage and power outages. And then once you get to that 1/4 to 1/2 an inch, which is not shown here, that's when you start to ramp up all of your power outages and trees down. And if you do get to a half an inch or more of freezing rain, that's considered heavy freezing rain accumulation, with roads likely impassable, widespread tree damage, and power outages likely. And if you were to get more than an inch of freezing rain, which again, we're not expecting that right now, but we can't completely rule it out that somebody gets close to an inch of freezing rain, that would be potentially catastrophic failure of the power grid, extensive tree damage, and impossible travel for a prolonged period of time.